In episode 2 of In the Trenches by Basement Brewed Fantasy Football, I sit down with Kevin Dyson, former first-round wide receiver of the Tennessee Oilers, who is a key part of not just one, but two of the most memorable plays in NFL history. You'll remember him as the guy who scored the game-winning touchdown in the Music City Miracle, catching a controversial lateral from Frank Wycheck on a kickoff return and taking it to the house, breaking the hearts of Buffalo Bills fans in the wild card round of the playoffs. And then a few weeks later, Kevin Dyson was on the opposite end of that emotional roller coaster, as he was the Titans wide receiver that came up 1 yard short of tying the game in Super Bowl 34 as the clock expired, ultimately losing to the Rams in Super Bowl 34. And you better believe that we talked about both of those plays in terrific detail in today's episode of In the Trenches. We talked about the details of those plays. We talked about strange occurrences and strange events that even led to Kevin Dyson being in position to be a member of those plays. But we also talked about the emotional roller coaster and what it's like being a human being living on opposite ends of such tremendous highs and tremendous lows of those plays happening within weeks of each other. That's not all we talked about. We talked about the fact that Kevin Dyson and his brother Andre Dyson were the first brothers in NFL history to score a touchdown in the same game, let alone on the same team, one of which being a defensive back. We talked about Kevin Dyson being the 16th overall pick in the NFL draft back in 1998 and where that ranks in his list of memories as a professional football player. And to commemorate today's conversation and the Music City Miracle, you're going to find that we are giving away this jersey, this autographed Music City Miracle jersey, autographed by Mr. Kevin Dyson himself. Stay tuned for the details on what that looks like. But all of that and a lot more is coming up on this terrific episode of In the Trenches by Basement Brewed Fantasy Football. Enjoy. What is up, my friend? Welcome to episode 2 of In the Trenches by Basement Brewed Fantasy Football. I'm your host. I am Mikey Henninger, and you, my friend, are in the right place at the right time, just like our very special guest here, Kevin Dyson, who seems to always be in the right place at the right time, just leaving gigantic memories everywhere he goes, especially in the NFL world. A key member of two of the most memorable plays in NFL history that were within the same month of each other. Dr. Dyson, how you doing today, buddy?
Man, I'm doing well, man. Appreciate you having me, brother.
Absolutely, man. I'm really excited about this one. Really happy to have you on. I know you and I talked a little bit before the show. I'm a big fantasy football guy. I quit my decade-long, corporate career so that I could dive into fantasy football. So I spend all day, every day studying wide receivers and running backs and all that stuff. So it's an honor to have you on the show, man. I really, really appreciate you being here.
I need to get some guidance from you if you're doing all that kind of research, man. I need to
30 hours a week, dude. 30 hours a week. If you need a guy, I know a guy for sure.
All right. Well, off the air, we're gonna find this out because I need some help.
I got you, man. We'll talk right after the show. Don't you worry. I'm going to send my sales team. No, I'm just kidding. Sales team is me. I'm a one-man business. So
that's anyway. All right.
So I thought we would there's a lot we're going to dig into here, man. I think I told you when we were chatting on Instagram a few days back that I like to like kind of promote the episode ahead of time where I can bring in questions from the audience. So I've been all over Reddit and Twitter and TikTok and Instagram and LinkedIn, just getting questions from the audience. So there's a lot we're going to talk about here. We're going to talk football. We're going to talk not football. We're going to talk your life in the educational space, all of that. But I thought it would make sense for us to start with your time in the NFL. And I got to ask, you were the 16th overall pick by the Tennessee Oilers, Tennessee Oilers back in the day. Where would you say draft day ranks as far as the most memorable moments of your entire life goes?
Golly, man, that's such a great question. From a athletic perspective, it's number one.
Yeah.
My year in '98, we had a lot of big names: Peyton Manning, Randy Moss, Ryan Leaf, Charles Woodson, Audrey Wadsworth. Those are just the guys supposed to go in the top 5 or so. And, they were kind of getting away from everybody going up to first round picks going to New York. Now they're kind of reverted back to that where they go to the draft site, but they invited a handful of guys to New York for the draft. And I didn't go. I don't think Moss went. I don't even think very many went except for the quarterbacks. I don't even remember who all went, to tell you the truth. Maybe been Woodson and Wadsworth and Leaf and Manning. I don't know if anybody else went. And you sit there, man, and at that time, they had full length of time before they made their selection. It was like 30 minutes. They had 30 minutes, and people took all 30. And
Right.
16th pick, it was like a full-time job. I was literally there from early in the morning, and I didn't get picked till like early afternoon. You know what I mean? And I was a 16th pick. I can't imagine being 200 something. You know what I mean? And it was just like this stress, anxiety filled waiting for your name to be called. The Cowboys were a team that was interested in me, and Jerry Jones does a little bit different than everybody else. He actually provides his potential picks with cell phones, so he can get a hold of you. He knows he can get a hold of you because he has that number, access to that number, and he has a runner that goes. There was 4 of us that had him, and they bring you the phone. So I had my home phone, my cell phone, and I had the Cowboys phone sitting there. And as soon as they made their pick, which I believe was Vonnie Holiday or Greg Ellis, they came, knocked on the door, grabbed the phone, and they were gone. I was like, well, that was that.
They took it from you.
Sit there they took it, and then sit there for another couple of hours. After that,
that's unreal.
I got the phone call from my agent and Jeff Fisher and Floyd Reese, and they said, how you like to be a Tennessee Oiler? I said, man, thank you. I'm ready to go. And next thing I know, a couple minutes later, my name was being called on the screen.
Man, that's awesome. Where were you when you got the call? I know you said you weren't at the event.
I was at home, man, my mom's house. Awesome. I didn't have a big party until after. I thought there was a part of me was like, man, I know people are telling me I'm anywhere from 8 to 16, and I've been watching the draft since I was a kid. You've seen people who were supposed to be first round picks dropped all the way down to the 3rd and all those type of things. And I didn't know. I mean, I never got caught up into all the hype of where I was supposed to go. I just know my agent was saying, you can go anywhere from number 8 to 16, which I ended up being. And just in case that didn't work, I didn't want to have a big fanfare, a bunch of people at my house and people trying to console me, because that was just going to make the anxiety even worse of waiting to hear your name called. So it was just me, real small, intimate, one of my good friends, my family, and things like that. And once I got picked, it was just this big sigh of relief, man, just that weight taken off your shoulders. And then I was ready to eat. I didn't eat up until that moment, nothing. And then, of course, I had people come through after that, but kept it really small and intimate until my name was called, man.
You were ready to eat. What was the draft day spread? Anything? Did you have anything special as far as food goes?
I think we had barbecue. Yeah, we had a little everything, little greens, mac and cheese, some chicken, some ribs. I mean, good old country boy. Man, we had good spread.
Yeah, the last episode we had Lane Taylor on the show, who's a Texas boy, and he's all about barbecue. So we literally did a whole segment on barbecue. But yeah, man. All right, so 1998, 16th overall pick, Tennessee Oilers. I mean, you're already working with some greats right off the bat, right? You're working with Eddie George, Aaron McNair, Javon Curse, some absolute studs. My editor, my producer, shout out to Tanner Dawson. He was one of the first to ask a question. He was super excited to hear that you were going to be hopping on the show. He wants to know what it was like playing with some of those guys from that era, the Eddie Georges, the Aaron McNairs, Javon Curse, Frank Wycheck, of course.
Wow. I say this. When I got drafted, there was still that humble part of me just was like kind of like pinch me. Am I here? Do I deserve to be here? And I had seen McNair on TV. You saw the whole Aaron McNair. You saw what he was doing at Alcorn State, the Heisman Trophy run. And, I never met him. I just seen him on TV. Saw Eddie's Heisman Trophy run, saw him on TV, saw how big and powerful he was, of course, I had grown up being a Cowboys fan, but you saw the Oilers. So I saw people like Marcus Robertson and Blaine Bishop, and then I knew Kenny Holmes was. He played for that Miami squad back in the day when they just was putting out talent, just loads and truckloads of talent every year, and from the Hurricanes.
Yeah.
And then, of course, like Frank Wycheck was kind of still coming into his own a little bit. He was becoming a Pro Bowler, perennial Pro Bowler. But one person that people tend to forget, or two, there's Mark Stepnowski, because I grew up a Cowboys fan, and he was now an Oiler. He was the center for that squad that year. And then Bruce Matthews. People forget Bruce, man, was the ultimate Iron Man in the National Football League. I don't know how many career starts in a row he had. Yeah, when I got there, he was in year 16, I think year 16 or 17. He had been watching this man for your whole life, and he's a perennial Pro Bowler. I mean, he kept going to Pro Bowlers, kept being all pro. I mean, like, he came in the league. I think I was like 7 years old when he came to the league. He's almost old enough to be my dad, man. And I'm playing alongside this man just to see how he just loved the game and his humbleness and his approach to the game, his professionalism. That was one of the most remarkable things, because, you know, it's not every day you get to play with Hall of Famers, right? And I got to play with one that was a surefire one, and maybe got another one or two off of that roster that will make it. But that was one of those things. We tend to talk about the Eddie Georges and the Steve McNairs of the world, but
Right.
Mark Stepnowski and Bruce Matthews, man, were like up there. Like, at their positions, they were some of the best to ever do it. But Eddie, consummate pro. When I talk about somebody who had the work ethic to go with the talent, he actually outworked his talent. He was talented, but he outworked his talent. He was a guy who just worked hard, and he taught me a lot, especially from that first day of conditioning, the conditioning test. I mean, I learned a lot that day. I thought I was good, that I was in shape until that day, and that's a whole nother story. But Steve McNair, yeah, that's another one. But Mac was just kind of a quiet assassin, man. He didn't yell, didn't scream. He kind of just did his job and went on to the next play, man. That's one thing I always appreciated about him. He wasn't adamant. If you dropped the ball, he wasn't adamant. He wasn't screaming at you. He went back. He threw it to you the next play. All right, get over it, kind of thing. He didn't have to say anything. Then you got people like Blaine Bishop and Marcus Robertson on the other side of the ball, who are just pros, just taught me how to study the game. I just watched them. They didn't even know I was watching. I was just watching how they prepared, how they studied the game, how they watched film and things like that. They were just teaching me how to be a pro without teaching me. And then, you know, some of the guys I came in with, like Samari Roll and guys like that, who are super talented. It's just the NFL is what people would expect when you go from one level to the next. You go from being one of the best players in your high school team to college, and you work your way up to be one of the best players in your college team, or even in the country. And then you go to the next level. Now you're in there with everybody's the best from their respective schools and teams. And it's that competitive every day. Every day is what I tell kids. Every day is money, because you literally are competing for money. I mean, even, of course, when you play games, you want to win, but jobs are on the line. There's only so many jobs every year, with 1,500 jobs a year, and for all those rosters. And after that, there's not a lot of room. You know, you got some other things. You go arena ball, you can go to Canada, you can do some different things, but the pinnacle of playing football, there's only 1,500 jobs. So it's work every day, every day, every year. You got to do what you can, stay around, man.
Love it, man. That's awesome. I'm going to go ahead and scratch off some other questions that I had on here, like favorite teammates, best leaders. I think we covered a pretty good chunk of those. And yeah, man, you're super right. Like, a lot of times it's so easy for us to focus in on the Eddie Georges, the Aaron McNairs, and especially in my world, right? The fantasy football world, where it's like quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends. We really don't, we definitely have blinders on when we're looking at
Right.
So David Cotty on LinkedIn, he wanted to ask you, and I thought this was a really good question, something that I think a lot of us casual NFL fans that aren't a part of the real game would like to know. How did you handle all the stresses around traveling, like constantly being away from the home, being away from family? And does that affect your performance on the football field when you are away from home?
Wow, man, that's a pretty good question. I don't think I've ever been asked that, and being part of the game for over 30 something years. Because it starts in college, right? High school is a little different. You hop
Right.
on a bus, you go to your venue, you get back on the bus, you go back home. College, that's when you first get, kind of into that travel mode. You leave on a Friday afternoon, you check in the hotel, you have your walkthroughs and meetings, and then you play Saturday morning. So you kind of get used to that routine somewhat in college. And then in the pros, because it varies, on days of the week. You got Thursdays, Sundays, and Mondays. Now you even pile in some Saturdays here and there, late in December and things like that. But to me, the biggest thing, because you get used to the travel aspect of it. You pack your bag, you travel, get on the plane. We get to the tarmac, hop on the plane. We didn't even go through security check. You hop on the tarmac, get on the plane. You fly, you play cards on the plane, you do whatever. You get to the hotel. That part becomes somewhat part of the routine. The non of it is the length of time. If it's an afternoon game, like a noon, 1 o'clock kickoff, those are always the best. And I don't know which player would tell you anything different. They all, because you go to bed, you wake up, and it's time to go. There's not a whole lot of downtime to just like really start overthinking the game and things like that. You just kind of get to wake up and get going. But the night games, those can be some of the worst ones, or even the late afternoon games, because you get up, you go eat, you might have meetings or chapel in the morning, and you start watching TV. You start watching the games that are going on. You start seeing what's going on. Your mind starts going off different places. You might take a nap, and things like that. It's just, and you get to laying around a little bit better. For me, it always took a little longer to get my body to get going, because I've been sitting around so long as opposed to getting up and going, and I don't know a lot of people that would feel any different. I think a lot of players would tell you they probably preferred to just get up and go, like get up in the morning, shower, eat, whatever your routine is, and get to the stadium and play, as opposed to sitting around there. So those are probably the biggest things. But I think you get used to the travel aspect of it. Going back to college now, depending on what school you went to, is probably a little bit different. But I think you get used to that part.
All right. So similarly, Tim Kraft on LinkedIn. I thought this was a pretty good question. What is it like when it's time for you to move on to the next team? So I know you finished your career with Carolina, and I know there was some, like the Chargers were involved in all that, but the playing days were with Carolina. What is it like when, you spend your entire career with Tennessee and then you move over to a new team, Carolina, in this example? Do you move your house and family, or is it kind of like you don't know what to expect, so you're kind of just like staying where you're at in Tennessee and just kind of winging it for the year? What's that like when there's that uncertainty of not knowing how long something like Carolina might stick, for example?
Yeah, I think for me it was to that. I only signed. I was coming off a hamstring injury, my free agent year, and me and my agent, we talked and we thought, let's just do a minimum, like a 1-2 year deal, get healthy, get my name back out there, and then get the big contract, which I never got because I got hurt again. And so for me, I kept my home in Tennessee throughout that, because I didn't know, because I only signed a 1 year deal. I only signed from that point on. I only signed 1 year deals because I was trying to get healthy to get to the point where I can get a multi-year deal. And then, this is Tennessee has been home for 20 something years now, 26 years almost now. And I'd be hard pressed to think that I would have even moved away from here if I didn't move back out west or something like that anyway. But I think I would have maybe handled it a little bit different. Say I had a 4 deal with Carolina instead of a 1 year deal. I probably would maybe invested in buying a home, because I would have been there for an extended period of time. But I don't know if I wouldn't have kept my home here or even came back here still to that point. Because there's a lot of players, for instance, in Tennessee that didn't even have ties to Tennessee. They're moving here. They're bought property here, bought land, like Aaron Rodgers, even Justin Timberlake. There's a lot of guys who are like investing in the area that come back here and move, that didn't play for the Titans. And so I think I would have made my way back here either way, or even kept my home here. But if I had signed a multi-year deal, I probably would have invested in some sort of real estate, whether it had been a condo or a house or something like that, that would have called home, as opposed to renting is what I did when I went from Carolina to San Diego to Washington and things like that.
Yeah, man, Nashville's hot. Nashville's happening. We're the wife and I and the kids actually next Friday we're headed down to the Alabama shores.
Oh yeah,
and we're about halfway there is Nashville. So we're like, well, we're gonna stop in Nashville for one night, show the kids around. I've been to Nashville a couple times, and yeah, man, Nashville. To your point, like it's the place to be, especially Justin Timberlake. I think he's born in Nashville, but yeah, man, that's a great.
Yeah, he's from he's just west of. He's from Memphis area, so he's
Memphis, okay.
He's a Memphis guy, but he supposedly has not supposedly, I know he does. He has a nice little estate out not too far from me, about 20-minute drive from here. So yeah, a lot of people moving out here.
So real quick, just staying on the topic of playing for multiple teams, and this one's more specific to offensive coordinators. Ryan Golden on LinkedIn, he wants to know, he's a lifelong Titans fan, by the way, so he's super excited about this show. He's one of my subscribers. He's one of my members of Basement Brood Fantasy Football. He said, I would love to hear his thoughts on how different things really are when you're working with different offensive coordinators. You obviously had two in Tennessee, and then you had another one in Carolina. We talk a lot about offensive coordinators changing. So I literally just recorded 5 straight episodes for my podcast and for this YouTube show about offensive coordinator changes, NFL changes, and what that means for fantasy football. So we talk a lot about it, but it'd be good to know from somebody who's lived it, somebody who's been on the field, how much of a difference it makes when you move from one offensive coordinator to the next. And you worked with 3, I believe, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and probably more than that if you count even the other squads. First of all, I'll say this: there are more similarities than different. People throw these names out there from RPO to West Coast to spread to all these. At the end of the fundamentals in the game, zone read, all this different stuff. Everybody's doing the same thing. They just add a little twist to it, right? So what it comes down to in the National Football League more often than not is terminology and how people call the play and how can you relate it, because a slant's a slant, a curl's a curl, a post's a post, a go route's a go route. But how do you get to those routes? How do you get to those combinations? How do you get to your protections and things of that nature? So I think more or less from that standpoint, from a player standpoint, is how you relate it to something you have done for a long time. Like, when I was in Tennessee, it was called a curl flat was called this. Well, when I got to Carolina, it was the same concept, but it was called something different. I think that is the learning curve for anybody that goes from one coordinator to the next. In Tennessee, uniquely, when we went from one coordinator to the next one with Les Steckel to Mike Heimerdinger, Mike adjusted to us. He brought in some of his concepts, but he kept the terminology similar to us. He learned what we call stuff. So it made that transition a whole lot easier for everybody. So instead of 30 guys learning a new offense, it was one guy learning a new offense, if you will. He wasn't learning the offense, he was just the terminology to make it fit what he did. And so and that I thought was ingenious by him, because typically it's the other way around, where you're like, hey, this is my thing, you 30 guys need to learn what I do. And I thought that's smart to have. He's only one. Now you got to rely on all 30, 40 of us to learn what you do, when if you just flipped it around, you're only one. So, and you can spend all day doing it. So I always thought that was the genius of Mike Heimerdinger and why he was successful as a coordinator as fast as he was. But other than that, man, football's football. It always comes back down to how well you block, how well you tackle, how well you read defense, how well you catch, how well you run the football, regardless of what the scheme is and what they say. You still got to be able to execute. So more or less, man, it's just terminology. Some guys condense it, and it'll be 2 or 3 words for the whole play. And then from my era, and even still some I see guys, they got a whole paragraph, but it tells everybody within that paragraph what they're supposed to do specifically. And so it's just a matter of comprehension, man, and being able to relate it to something so you can do your job.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
good to know. That's super helpful. Like moving forward, maybe I won't place so much of an emphasis on some of these changes for fantasy football purposes, at least.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
last
that's the
question.
other part of that too. The other part of that is philosophy. You like there's the philosophy is there's ones like you can look at somebody like Mike Vrabel, who's obviously a run first oriented coordinator and a defensive minded time possession, field position type guy versus a guy like what's the guy down in Philly? I'm trying to think of his name, who's more of
Well, there's Kellen Moore, there's Nick Sirianni.
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Sirianni, who are more spread you out and create lanes where he can utilize his quarterback and things of that nature. So that's a little different sense of philosophy. But as far as schemes and things like that, everybody steals from each other. They see what worked the week before and they implemented some kind of way that embeds in what they do and they do it against that team the very next week. Things are just it's just a matter of, hey, I want to throw the ball first and second down as opposed to no, we're running on first and second down. I mean, that's overgeneralizing it, but that's kind of the philosophy change. Yeah. What I say is that's to me is one of the biggest differences you see if you're talking about fantasy football. That is, you look at that coach history of he likes to throw the football 60% of the time and run 40, but they're running the same plays. But the philosophy shift, as opposed to somebody like I said, Mike, who's more on the other side of that. He's more of a defensive-minded, time possession, field position, possessions, and number possessions type guy, which is more atypical of a defensive-minded coach.
Yeah, we actually talked about that in episode 1 of Inside the 20 when I started that series of changes, like head coaching. Yeah. We talked our case study was the Chargers and going from Kellen Moore as their offensive coordinator. Now they're bringing in Jim Harbaugh. They're bringing in Greg Roman, who 9 out of 10 seasons has been, as an offensive coordinator, he's been top 10 in the league in rushing attempts. And so just a huge philosophy shift. And now, of course, you're seeing like Keenan Allen was traded, Mike Williams was cut. So there's some change coming in LA, but that's neither here nor there. Last quick question before we move into a different section or segment. True Blue Morpho on Reddit. He wants to know, when did you learn that you and your brother were the first brothers in NFL history to score touchdowns in the same game? Did you know right away? Is that something somebody told you? And then as a follow-up to that, how did you feel about that? Was that something you saw coming? Happy coincidence? Just walk us through that a little bit.
Shoot, man, I'm trying to think when we found out. I want to say, I don't know if we found out. We didn't find out during the game, so I'll take that away. I want to say we either found out that afternoon after the game, this Tampa Bay, I believe, and I think either we found out that day or the next day. But I had to ask my brother. I don't even remember because we both kind of try to downplay it for whatever reason. But it was unique, man, and I don't think we definitely didn't know during the game. I was just super excited. It's my younger brother, man, 4 years behind me, and to see him get a pick six and things like that.
Right.
I was more happy about that than anything. And then the fact that I don't realize that I had a touchdown earlier in the game and wasn't even thinking about it. You know what I mean? I was just so excited for him to get his first career touchdown and things like that. And I want to say Robbie Bourne or Tony Wiley, one of our SIDs, told us after the game, I think, but if not, it wasn't after the game, it was shortly thereafter, maybe the next day. And man, it was kind of cool to learn that. And it still hasn't been done some 20 years later now, almost. I guess it is about almost 20 years now that happened. I guess that was like 03, 04. I'd be hard pressed to see if that ever is duplicated again. I mean, you got to have two brothers on the same team, one playing opposite positions, two, one being a receiver, one being a DB, same uniform. That's something that something we'll have for forever, man. I feel like that's going to be up there for a long time. It's going to be hard to break that one.
That's what I'm saying, man. Like, as I was doing my research, and anybody who knows me from the fantasy football space, my research is thorough, dude. I spend like hours preparing for things. I think you know this because of the video I sent you on Instagram, but I'm like, man, everywhere Kevin Dyson goes is just memories everywhere. Like the fact that you and your brother were on the same team, he was on defense, like scoring touchdowns on defense is not easy. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So speaking of big time memories, there's two plays we have to talk about, right?
Of course.
We have to. So we're going to move into the Music City Miracle. Before we do that, one really quick word from our sponsors. Sustain Health and Performance and their owner, Jordan Poggle, are the go-to resource for Basement Brood fantasy football subscribers that are looking to lose weight and keep it off for good. In fact, one BBFF subscriber lost over 30 pounds in their first 4 months working with Jordan, and I myself worked with Jordan when I needed to lower my cholesterol and lower my blood pressure. And by the way, I also accidentally lost 11 pounds, which was never the focus, but my wife isn't complaining at all. So if you're looking for a simple and a sustainable and an effective way where you can lose weight and, more importantly, keep it off for good, all while performing your best every single day, then you need to contact Jordan. Get in touch with him on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or just follow the link that we left for you in the show notes to learn more about how he can work with you too. And when you do connect with him, let him know that Mikey sent you, because BBFF subscribers get 10% off their first 4 months of working with Jordan. All right, man. Music City Miracle, right? You got to know that when I was sourcing questions from the audience, most of them had questions about two very specific plays, and we'll talk about both. We'll start with the Music City Miracle, and by far, I guarantee you get this question millions of times. Greg Spencer on Instagram, Albie Salsa on LinkedIn. Multiple people wanted to know, was that a forward pass, or did you guys get away with one?
No, it's a lateral. Look at the flight of the football. I think people don't understand the rules of the flight of the ball. It's the flight of the ball. The flight of the ball is indicating the rule book, and anything in lateral is the true sense of what a lateral is. It's right down the line, straight laterally down the line, or slightly back. If you look at the flight of the football and not the body movement of Frank Wycheck, who was floating backwards and slightly to his left, and me coming back to my right, it is a lateral. Actually, the ball kind of slightly even goes backwards. So from that perspective, 100%. Based on the rules, it is a lateral.
Agreed, 100%. And there's been tons of analysis and people like drawing the lines and all that stuff. Yeah. I want to know how many times you have answered that question in your life.
In 24 years. Golly, I don't even know if I could put a number on that, man. It's literally hundreds.
Every time.
What's interesting is, I've met Buffalo Bills fans or family members of Bills fans and things like that, man. And that's that's a sore spot for a lot of Bills fans. But I've had some good banter back and forth with some people, and it was good to meet them because, I think a lot of times we vilify people rather before knowing them and getting to talk to them and things like that. And I get it, man. I'm a sports fan. I'm a Lakers fan. I grew up Lakers and I grew up a Cowboys fan. So, I had my moments too, where I couldn't stand somebody. Like I hated the Celtics growing up. I hated Larry Bird growing up, for various reasons, because I was a Lakers guy. So I get it. So it's been fun to be able to talk about it for 20 something years, man. And hopefully I get to talk about it for another 20 something more.
Well, hopefully it hasn't been too toxic, brother. Like, if there's one thing I hate about the fantasy football space or social media in general, it's how, like, a lot of times people forget that you guys are humans. You know what I mean? They I don't know. That's a whole nother thing we can get into at some other time. But it's funny you bring up Buffalo fans. It's almost like you're looking like directly at my show notes, because my next question for you, it's from Ashwin Narakar on LinkedIn, and I'll just read it to you verbatim. From the perspective of an emotional Buffalo fan, this is literally my next question for you. From the perspective of an emotional Buffalo fan, I would ask him, how does it feel to be responsible for one of the most devastating plays in Buffalo's history? And he does that a little tongue-in-cheek, just joking. His legitimate question is, but from a legit football perspective, I'd like to ask his thoughts on how did that play come about? Who decided to call it? I believe I saw in my research that there was a string of events that led to you even being on the field in that moment. I might be wrong about that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but walk us through kind of how that whole thing developed from deciding what to do and who was on the field and all that. Yeah.
And what was the first part of the question? I'm sorry.
Oh, the first part of the question was just how does it feel to be responsible for one of the most devastating plays in Bills history, or tongue in cheek?
I'll answer that one real quick. So that very next year, we opened up season opener at Buffalo. And I swear I have never felt as much disdain for me in my life. I mean, they were throwing beer bottles at our bus and everything. I swear there was one, I was leaned up coming in. I used to lean up, resting my head on the glass. I kid you not. I don't know if they knew it was me or not, but there was one that hit the glass right by my head. And I was like, dang, did they know it was me? I've never been booed so much in my life. And then this is a sidebar story when my free agent year, 2003, 2004, Greg Williams, who was defense coordinator for us during that time, was now the head coach of the Bills, who brought me in to play receiver. I was free agent. And man, the hate I got in the media and the news, I to this day feel like that's part of the reason why I didn't ever sign with the Buffalo Bills. I feel like the people were just that adamant that they did not want me in Buffalo. Like, for real, it was that bad. Like, first thing the equipment manager said to me was, it's for a pass, right? I'm like, man, I'm just here trying to extend my career. I want to play football, man. But again, to your point, people, they get emotionally invested in their teams and things like that. And it was just one of those moments where they just, I get it. Like I said, man, I had my things about Larry Bird and Celtics back in the day. That was go ahead.
I'm really glad you brought this up, Kevin, because I think we were just talking about like social media and how vitriolic it can be. And I hope that people listening to this and watch this can understand that like the way you treat a player might impact whether or not they want to sign with your team or play in your city, and
I wanted to. I didn't mind. Like they had a good team. I think Peerless was also about to be free agent. Eric Moulds was still there. He about to be free agent, I believe. So they had a good team. And I knew the coaching staff and I knew the philosophy and things like that. It wasn't me. I just think that if they got so much flack about it from their fan base that I really think it affected what they ended up doing with me as far as coming up there. But to play, man, that day we playing Buffalo, we were pretty much dominating the game from a field position statistical standpoint, other than we just really couldn't get the ball in the end zone. And then they got hot a little bit there in the third, fourth quarter, eventually taking the lead. And as what we do, a lot of teams have what they call like their last three or last five. And I'm over there with the offense and everybody, and we're talking about, hey, we're going to get the ball. Depending on field position, these are our last three or last five. Their routine, we work on them every week. Kind of what they are. Last play 1, last play 4, last whatever they are. You're right. They're kind of scripted in some respect. And so when Alan Lowry and Jeff Fisher came and got me, I was like, why are they coming to get me? Like I'm only on Hans' team. Like they just took the lead. I was somewhat thinking like, what? Like why are you coming to get me? I'm not on kickoff return. But so as he explained, it was D Mace, who had got concussed on a punt return, I believe, and AD Anthony Dorsett Jr. Was cramping and couldn't run. Well, the irony in both of those are when Derek Mason got knocked, I was going in the locker room to get intravenous fluids because I was cramping up in the third quarter, and lo and behold, his backup, Anthony Dorsett Jr., started cramping up in the fourth quarter and couldn't run. So that's the irony of the whole thing, like how it was just divine providence, man, that I was even out there and have an opportunity to be a part of that. And then the design of the play, the gist of it was you put Frank in there, who has solid hands, some of the best hands of people I've been around as far as ball catchers. He put him in there. He's a good athlete. He can throw the football. And usually in the typical fashion, teams keep the ball on the ground so you don't have opportunity to set up your return for whatever reason. And I was at San Diego with Coach Phillips, and I never did ask him this, but I wanted to. He was the coordinator in San Diego when I was there. Why they decided to bloop it, I don't know. They put it in the air. And Lorenzo Neal caught it. And the sidebar note of that is, first of all, Lorenzo Neal was not known for pass catching. He was known as a blocker. Yep. And I'm saying this, and Eddie and everybody will back me up on this. When that ball went in the air, we probably like, oh crap, it's going right to Lorenzo Neal. Like, this is it. But I'll say this, Lorenzo Neal's a Hall of Famer. I wish they need to really look at how they put in fullbacks or how they judge fullbacks in the NFL, specifically from early 2000s, mid 2000s down, because guys like him, Sam Gash and Tom Rathman, and some of these guys who have blocked for Eddie George, Roger Craig's, Emmitt Smith's, Corey Dillon's, who am I thinking of? I'm thinking of somebody like so many different backs, Damian Tomlinson. I'm thinking of some of the guys, some of these fullbacks that block for that are in the Pro Football Hall of Fame that would not be there without these guys. So that's my sidebar note. So anyway, sorry. And so what I didn't know, I learned years ago, was that Lorenzo Neal, prior to the kick, went to Frank and said, "Hey, I'm gonna get this ball. Come get it from me. I'm gonna block for you." So he ordained it. He knew it was coming to him for some kind of reason. So the ball goes up, he catches it. You see Frank go retrieve it from him. And to this day, God rest his soul, man. Frank's not with us no more, but we'll never be able to share the story together again. But I don't know. I can't remember. I don't think he realized who he was throwing it to. I just think he just knew his role. He knew his job. He reeled back, hand out, threw it right down the line. I saw Isaac Bird, who's another friend of mine, who over 24 years of telling this story somewhat, I have never asked him why he came up the way he did, because people forget he was also at a position, meaning he was moved into a position not familiar to him as well. Up a spot he hadn't run. He was moved into Derek Mason's spot, which was the guy who was supposed to catch the lateral. And then the play was the number one returner catches the lateral. He goes down the line with the convoy of blockers. If he gets in trouble, the second return guy gets in pitch relationship with him, and he pitches it to him, and then that guy gets what he can. Well, the number one return guy ended up being Isaac Bird because of everything else. I was put in the number two spot. Well, he was out of position. And so, sometimes instincts just kick in, and coaches would say, football players got to be a football player. And I just was sitting there and I saw Frank and I was like, oh, okay. And here we go. And I just reached back, caught the ball. And truth be told, man, I tell the story and I get a lot of credit, but my job was the easy part in the sense. One thing I could do, I had long legs, I could run, and I knew it. And then truth be told, it was a lateral. The ball could have bounced to me. It was a fumble. So, but I caught it smoothly, got up and ran. Yep. And that's what I was gifted to do anyway. So I had the easy part. Everybody else had the hard part, who've been working on it, practiced it, and everything else. I just get to want to tell their story.
Man, I appreciate the intricacy of the details, because casual NFL fan, right? Like I'm not on the field. I don't really know what's going on. We all think we know what's going on. We don't have a clue. So it's crazy to think like how prepared, how well detail oriented NFL teams are. And sometimes it just comes down to not luck, but sometimes luck, like just being in the right place at the right time. So that's one heck of a story, man.
Most big plays are a mistake, man. Just so casual fans know, most big plays are a mistake. All off infield plays, there's some that are designed to be the home run, right? But more often than not, offense is designed to be methodical. Defense will stop you from scoring, right? So more often than not, big plays, 70-yard runs, 89-yard touchdowns are a mistake. Somebody bad coverage, misread, tripped, fell. More often than not, stuff like that is an accident, right? Sure. So I think we just get enamored with that kind of stuff and think, oh, that's actually the game. But the game is played between the whistles and between those hash marks and play by play by play. Or else we'd have 100-point games, and that's not the case. So, totally. But plays like the BC Miracle, man, is what sport to me is all about. That that why you go to a game, to have that moment that you could take with you for a lifetime. You know what I mean? You think about the time I remember as a kid watching Michael Jordan against Cleveland Cavaliers and getting that ball going to the elbow, the free throw line, and pulling up, hanging in the air, knocking down that shot to win. That still sticks with me at 48 years old, right? And that's awesome. What I hope the Miracle reminds people of,
Absolutely, man. And that's exactly what you said. That's what sports are all about. Like, so we live for those moments, those memorable moments. And it's funny you bring up basketball, because I remember in the research finding that basketball is actually your first love, and
Yeah.
you told your mom you were going to be a ball player and buy her a house and all that stuff. But I was going to talk to you about that, but we'll possibly come back to that. The last question I wanted to ask you on the Music City Miracle is, without being prompted, like without somebody asking you about it, how often do you just on your own, how frequently do you think about that play? How frequently does that memory come into your mind just out of nowhere?
Man, that's a great question. I don't, very rarely. I think I'm usually prompted by something, whether it be the question or the video is played or I see something on TV. I don't think I necessarily, every now and then I think about stuff. I mean, of course I got it, like pictures of it in my basement and stuff like that as well. But, and so I think about it, but very rarely from a personal standpoint, either of the plays really. I think usually I'm prompted by a question, or the time of year, like the playoffs time of year. And, we get to January, February of football season, and then I'll think about it. But, things like that. But very rarely though, you kind of surprised. I think people would be surprised to hear that. I very rarely think about it.
Yeah. I mean, that's just something I was curious about. All right, we're going to move on to the next one. First of all, though, I just wanted to mention this to anybody watching, anybody listening. We are going to be doing a giveaway of a Music City Miracle jersey that is signed by Mr. Dyson himself. I don't know if you remember, probably not. You've probably signed a million of these, but
I remember those.
You do? Yeah.
Yes.
It's an authentic, it's a legitimate Music City Miracle. I got this from Greg Spencer at BS Collectibles in Twin Lakes, Wisconsin. And we're going to be doing a giveaway for this. Stay tuned for details on my YouTube, on my TikTok, on my LinkedIn, on my newsletter. Details are coming, but one lucky person is getting this Kevin Dyson autographed Music City Miracle jersey. Sorry, Dr. Dyson, you are not eligible to win it. I'm sure you have your own. I
have a jersey not signed.
That's true. Yeah, you could probably fix that. All right, man. We are going to move into the other play. It's titled The Tackle, also known as 1 Yard Short. Right before we dive into that, a quick message from our sponsors. If you're anything like me, you know that the older you get, the more responsibility you get, the more involved you become as a parent or as a coach or as a father or as a husband or as an entrepreneur, whatever it is, it becomes increasingly more difficult to find those friendships and find those connections and find those people that can take you where you want to go in your life. And that is why I would recommend to anybody that wants to maximize every single day that they get out of their lives to contact Paul Conley at High Achievers. Paul runs a group that's exactly what it sounds like. It's a group of men that are and want to be high achievers. They want to be the best versions of themselves as a father, as a husband, as a man, as a human, as an entrepreneur, as a professional. And Paul does a perfect job of creating this community, this support system where all of these guys who have completely different but gigantic goals come together and work together to help each other achieve those goals. Paul meets with his members individually. Paul brings in guest speakers to help. I could not recommend working with Paul and working with the high achievers enough. Get in touch with Paul using the information that we left for you in the show notes. All right, so I got to be honest, Mr. Dyson, there's a part of me that wasn't sure if I was going to bring this up because I know, and then in my research, I saw a Sports Illustrated article that somebody spent some time with you, and it said there's a printout of a meme created by one of the teachers at Grassland, featuring a still shot of Kevin Dyson getting tackled by Mike Jones at the 1 yard line, forever short of the end zone, and it says it reads, "When you're late for class and you almost make it before the tardy bell." So that told me that you've learned to live with it and accept it and embrace it. So that told me that it's okay for us to talk about this. I don't want to talk about something that hurts your heart a little bit. I guess just walk us through that moment from your eyes, and just a quick background for people watching and listening. So we talked about the Music City Miracle. 5 weeks later, in the Super Bowl against the LA Rams. The Titans are down 6, or I forget how much you're down, but your touchdown would have won the game. You're down 3.
7.
Right? Anyway,
We were down 7.
Down 7. Okay, so you were coming up to tie the game. There were 6 seconds left. And Mr. Dyson catches the ball, and he gets tackled at the 1 yard line. And there's all these famous photos of him stretching and reaching out, and he's just a little bit short. And it's one of the most memorable moments. It's one of the Super Bowls that I remember from growing up. I was born in 88, and that was like around the time where football's starting to click for me. But anyway, I guess walk us through all of that through the eyes and through the life of Kevin Dyson.
What's crazy is, just like you said, just a few weeks before, I was a part of a play that I wasn't even supposed to be on the field for, and it worked out how it wasn't designed to go. And then 3 weeks later, I'm on the field. I'm part of the progression. It goes as designed, and the only difference being Mike making the play and I didn't. And me and Mike have talked about over the years. Obviously, they've gotten us together a few times, and listening to him talk about it has really helped in a lot of respects. It's almost like therapeutic. He talked about how my momentum helped him be able to get his left arm over the top of my left knee, so I couldn't extend. Because if he doesn't get his left hand on my knee, I can extend, and I'm getting that last 3 feet because he's not in a secure spot to make the tackle. And even like when you run the play, you watch me go in motion, come back. Their defense design is 3-on-2, what we used to call a triangle. They have a safety over the top of me and Frank, one on the inside of Frank, one on the outside of me. And so what they're doing is they're reading coverage. So anything immediate to the inside, Mike Jones takes. Anything immediate to the outside, Dexter McClean, he takes. And so the idea of the play is to push vertically to strain both of those guys, make them have to be in limbo to not have a decision. And then I come underneath Frank and right underneath the safety. I mean, the linebacker who has to carry Frank through the vertical seam to the safety, who was Lester Lyle, I think, was a safety on that side, and who's playing for the deep game. So basically, if I come underneath and Mike jumps me too soon, then he throws it right. That's the idea, is I come underneath, Mike jumps me, and then the quarterback can throw to the seam, which would have been McNair to Frank, right behind his head. Well, Mike can carry Frank a little bit further and still get to me quicker because now he has the back line of the end zone to protect him. So now the vertical threat is a little harder to get to. But even still, the way his shoulders were parallel to me and me coming across, full speed, I didn't think he had the angle to secure a tackle. And he really did it. If you look at it, I still was able to get underneath him. And as I'm turning upfield, he got his one arm around my waist and the other one around my knee, and he stopped me from extending. And that's the gist of the play, man. It was a well-designed play on both ends of it. We knew what coverage they were going to be in. My side was the zone beater, which they were in the zone. The other side of the field was a man beater. And so once I went in motion and saw the coverage, I knew the ball was coming my direction. We ran that play against them earlier in the year in October. I think Frank got the ball, and it was highly successful. I don't know. I can't remember if Mike even shared they knew we were going to run. I think he did say he kind of knew we were going to run. Again, I got underneath him. Everything happens a lot faster inside the 10. So maybe I was a little bit quick, but everything happens a lot faster inside the 10. Even still, I didn't feel like he had the right angle to make the play. And he did, man. I mean, he didn't have the right angle, but he made the play. And that to this day is one of the hardest things in sports that I've ever been through, because that was the first time that I can remember still to this day. I've been trying to think of something 20-something years later of a moment where I was not successful when I had the ball in my hand in a situation like that. Music Miracle included. I'm talking in Little League soccer. I'm talking about Little League football, basketball, high school, college. I got game winners in college. I've all the things, right? I don't think I've ever had the ball in my hand and not gotten it done. And that's fortunate as it can be now. It's not a whole lot of those, there's a few of those instances, but even still, even as few as they are, I don't know how many, or 8, 9, whatever. That was the first time, and it was the biggest stage of my life. So that was, it still is one of the hardest things to even deal with. But to your point, it's part of the game, man. It's a memory for somebody else, and I got a lot of people that played ball before me, played during my time, and are playing after me that hadn't even had opportunity to get to that chance, get to that game, and then we're still talking about it 20-something years later. So, you got to take the good with the bad, man. And you made that point about that meme that teacher made. I thought that was hilarious. It was super funny. I've done some parodies of it since then. I actually did one with the NFL the year after it, where I was going to see psychologists, and I was talking about I was having these nightmares. I couldn't reach everything. I couldn't reach the salt on the table. I couldn't reach the book and all the different things. So it's part of it, man. It's you got to take the good with the bad, and that was one of those moments where he got it done, and unfortunately, I came up short.
Yeah, man. I sympathize for you, Kevin, because I never came close to the NFL or college or even high school, but I remember being in Little League, coming up to the plate with 2 outs and a runner on second, and hitting a pop fly out to left, and that hurting my soul I'm 35 and I still think about that. And that was a Little League championship game. So to be on the biggest stage, yeah. And so to be on the biggest stage, and for that, nobody else in the world can know what that feels like. Maybe there's a very few amount of people. So I sympathize with him, and I imagine that's got to be something that was tough. It's really cool to hear that you've learned to laugh about it and accept it. And I love what you said there about it's a memory for someone else, because you're right. That's something that, Mike Jones, he's going to remember. That's his Music City Miracle. He made a hell of a play. That was one hell of a tackle. I do want to give you one here. Do Clerk from Do Clerk 5794. He's on Reddit, Tennessee Titans fan. I went to Tennessee Titans Reddit for some of these questions. So he would like to say, first, I'd like to thank Kevin for all of the good memories. Okay, so you're still beloved in 10, and I think you know that. Secondly, being that the Music City Miracle and the Super Bowl happened in the same postseason, he had only a couple weeks in between two of the biggest plays in his life and NFL history. So one, did he even have enough time in between to let the magnitude of what he did in the Music City Miracle set in before he played in the Super Bowl? And then number two, I love this question. So I'd say let's focus in on this one. Which high and low was more extreme? Which one did the joyful feeling of the Music City Miracle bring him more joy in his life, or did being 1 yard short in the Super Bowl bring more sorrow? Which one hit the soul and hit the heart a little bit more? And he does end up by saying, "Love you, KD," with 4 straight exclamation marks. So nothing but love from this guy.
Oh man. First question, simply put, no. We didn't have a whole lot of time in between. You just kind of like the next game, next thing up.
Yeah. Divisional. Yeah.
Truth be told, after the Music City Miracle, I didn't realize the fuss. I knew you had to replay. That was the first year we brought replay back to the NFL, and I didn't realize how close it actually was. So I got home and watched it that night on TV. I was like, "Ooh, it was close." But as soon as you get back to work that Sunday or Monday, it was next to next game. Of course, people ask me questions about it, and my focus was it was similar to the Franco Harris thing where, he had a Hall of Fame career. He had that moment, the immaculate reception, but he also got the championship ring. So that was kind of what I was sharing, that same narrative. He had the signature moment, but I want to win the title. I want a ring, So there wasn't a whole lot of time during that run. But that second part, man, I appreciate this question a lot because, I think people tend to forget there was the two extremes, the ultimate highs and the ultimate lows. And in sports, you're going to deal with those. That's the roller coaster of sport, right? The ups and downs of sport. But in a 3-week period, and to experience that the way I did, and the irony of the plays, meaning the Music City Miracle didn't go as designed. I wasn't supposed to be on the field, and it worked out. It was my first playoff game to my first Super Bowl. I'm in the progression, and the play goes as designed and it doesn't work out. That stress level was so extreme. Even now, that's such a profound question. It's hard to equate that because when you win, you're humbled and win, right? And you're gracious in a loss. And I was quick to dismiss it and like, hey, we're on to the next game, on to the next game, on to the next game. But that Super Bowl, that's the last game of the year. So I got the whole offseason to stew over that. Like there's no more tomorrows. Your tomorrow start in March and April in the offseason workouts. So there wasn't a game next Sunday. So to answer that question in the form that he asked it, I'm gonna say that one just because with the Music Miracle, it was such a great moment, such a high. But after the next day, we were game planning for the Indianapolis. Yeah, we're getting for the next game. Where that one, I had to sit there and stew on that for the whole offseason. Now, I did a bunch of TV things and all that kind of stuff that year, and of course we talked about both of them. Yeah. I mean, I did like 106 in Park. I did some game show. I did Jim Rohn show. I was doing all these different shows, and we were talking about different things. And yeah, it was therapeutic in a sense, but you still talk about both extremes. But that lasting moment was coming up short. And so that whole my off season, man, I was a demon in that workout. Not that I didn't work hard before, but I wanted to get back to that moment. And we still had a good team. That next year, we still went 13-3. And I ended up getting hurt, but even still, we had a good team, and it was about getting back to that moment. I wanted that moment back so bad. Even when I was with Carolina going Super Bowl with them, I wanted that moment bad. And it was a different era, different team, different conference, the whole nine. It's just one of those things that just kind of sticks with you.
Yeah, man. I that's such a great point, by the way. Like the Music City Miracle, you're playing again in 7 days. Like you're not afforded the time to like dwell on that. And then the Super Bowl, you don't play again for 6 months or 4 months or whatever. So that's a really good point. Last question for you, and I know you got hop here. Jordan Powell from Sustain Health and Performance. He wants to know, and I thought this was a good question. How long did it take for you to realize that it was not a touchdown? Like when you got tackled, did you know you were short, or did you need to see the replay? Like, or do you still think like, were you in? No, I'm just kidding. But
no, man, these are some good questions, man. I hate to cut it off. Golly, it's a very good question. As I was going down, and all I saw was the yellow paint of the end zone, and it was vivid. Like I don't remember the logo. I don't remember the sign, the lettering, or anything else. I just remember that yellow paint, and it was so vivid. And I seriously thought I was in. And I remember reaching and thinking, and as I'm rolling over, thinking, did the tip of the football cross that plane? And they're going to review this. So that's why you see me extend that one little reach, just because I thought maybe this would prompt them to review it, and there might be a glimpse that this football got over the plane. But when that confetti started falling, man, you look up and you see the blue and gold confetti falling. That was like it was just surreal. Like there's no way this game is over, that it just ended that way. I mean, besides me and my personal feelings, like starting from our first game of the season and the comeback victory against the Bengals to the Music Miracle up into that Super Bowl, like all the things in between, the how we fought and always found a way to win. Like I tell people this story even 20-something years later, when we got that ball down inside, deep in our own territory, I don't think anybody on that sideline or in that huddle did not think we were going down the field and do what it took to win the football game. And sure enough, we went the length of the field, about to go in and score, and to come up a yard short. And then it's just like this, no way that just ended like that. There's no way. Like it was a hard pill to swallow. So like in that moment, did I know I was short? I think so. But my heart of hearts, I was hoping to get that review to at least make them second guess it. And no, I knew I was short.
Man. Dude, I hate to end this on one of the sad notes. I know you said you got to hop, and I already kept you over time, so I appreciate you sticking
We're
with me,
good,
man.
bro.
There's still so much. There's still
You
so much I
got
wanted
one
to
more in
say.
you. Go ahead. You got one more in you, Mikey. Go ahead, man. I got you.
Oh
One
man,
more.
I got so much in here, dude. Because I know I wanted to talk current NFL. Because I know are you still doing pregame and postgame for Type Radio Network 104.5?
I do. I
So I
more or
wanted to
less. I just do post game now.
Okay, and I wanted to chat with you about your. A lot of times, I like to get away from football and talk about like personal life. And I know, obviously, you've been in the education system for a long time. Thank you, by the way. My wife,
Yeah.
7th and 8th grade math. I know it. You know, you're in high school now, but you've dealt with middle school, and high school is its own animal. So I have a lot of respect for anybody who's in the education system because my wife comes home, tells me stories about parents, and it gets my blood boiling. So anyway, I appreciate. There's a lot that I wanted to talk to you about there, but let's see. One more question. Okay, we got to ask.
You have to bring me back, dude. You had to bring me back.
Oh, anytime you want, man. What are you doing next Friday? What next Saturday? Real quick. We got to talk about this one because there was a lot of people on Reddit talking about the quote unquote rivalry between the Titans and Ravens. I don't know if that's a legitimate thing to Kevin Dyson, if that was a real rivalry to you, but it's kind of relevant now because we're talking about King Henry just signed with the Baltimore Ravens. My last episode that I recorded, episode 6 or 7 of Inside the 20, where we talked about free agency frenzy, the impact of NFL players going to new teams. I got to tell you, from a fantasy football standpoint, Derrick Henry going to the Ravens is like mouth-watering from a fantasy football standpoint. But
Absolutely.
you being involved with Titans Radio Network, obviously you probably have some sort of relationship with Derrick Henry, or you're familiar with the Titans, and then there's that rivalry with the Ravens. Talk to us just real quickly. If I do have more question, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Derrick Henry moving to the Ravens. If that hurts from like a loyalty, not loyalty, but from a one team to the next standpoint, how you feel about him going to Baltimore?
I tell you what, I go back to when Mac and Mace and Samari went over there. That hurt, and not in a sense, because I think we all understand it's business, and they didn't go over there thinking, "Oh, I hate the Ravens" or anything like that. It was business. It's this is a team provide me an opportunity to extend my career and pay me a little bit of cheese along the way. This is where I'm gonna go. And what I mean by it hurts is that was again that next year that after the Super Bowl 34, that was a team that knocked us off and then went to go win it all. On top of the battles we went back for. My rookie year, 1998, people would, you come back home, people ask you a whole lot of questions. I was one of the few people in the National Football League from University of Utah at the time. And they were like, "Man, what's the toughest team you played?" I said, "The Baltimore Ravens." They were 6-10, I think, that year. They're like, "Really? Not Miami?" I said, "No." I said, "That was the realest defense I ever played in my life." I mean, I'm battling every play, like banging, hitting. I was like, "No, the Baltimore Ravens." I said, "They are good. I know their record is. That was the best team I played against." And sure enough, a couple years later, they were in the Super Bowl, right? And so I think that's what hurt more or less is, that was a team that was kind of that we battled. They got over the hump and won the Super Bowl. And then we had guys like Mac and Samari and even Mace and now Derrick Henry going over there, right? But I think the rivalry was more between the coaches than us as players. I think we understand the business part of it because we had Deron Jenkins come over here, Michael Orr has come over there from there, and so it's been a little bit of trading of places, but so it's not the personal. It's always business in the National Football League. Guys just want to be able to extend their careers as long as possible, make as much money as they can as possible, and be as productive as they can as possible. And hopefully the ultimate thing is to have that enshrinement, man, at the end of your career. And Derrick Henry's is close to that. And if he can get to Super Bowl and win one, able to get his name called in Canton one day.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Dr. Dyson, dude, this was awesome. And I know I'm happy to have you back anytime. I got lots more questions for you. Getting away from football too. So we'll do that at another time. I just got to say, I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on. I know you've been traveling. I know you've been up to a lot. So thank you for taking the time out. For anybody listening, we're recording this on a Saturday morning that Dr. Dyson's giving me his time. So thank you so much for coming on, man. I had a lot of fun. Thank you.
All right, man. I appreciate you, brother. Have a good one.
If you liked today's episode and you wish there was more of that conversation with Kevin Dyson, hang in there, because we're going to get Kevin back on this show. There's still so much that I wanted to talk to him about, so much in my show notes that we just didn't have time to get to. I'd love to talk to him about the current NFL and how it compares to his playing days. I'd love to talk to him about his time in the education space. He spent the last 2+ decades in assistant principal roles, coaching, mentorship, athletic director, helping out schools in Tennessee. He's currently a principal of a high school in Nashville. And I have a lot of respect for anybody who's in the educational industry, considering my wife is a middle school math teacher. And I'll tell you, the stories she comes home and tells me about, that could be its own podcast. So nothing but respect for anybody in the education space. But if you like today's episode, then you'll probably also love episode 1 of In the Trenches, where I sat down with Lane Taylor, a former Green Bay Packers offensive lineman who spent 8 years of his NFL career protecting a future Hall of Famer in Aaron Rodgers. And you better believe we talked about it. We talked about what it was like playing with number 12. We talked about playing with the Green Bay Packers. And we talked about barbecue and Disney princesses and everything else under the sun. So go back, listen to episode 1 of In the Trenches by Basement Brewed Fantasy Football. As for what's next, hit the subscribe button and come back on Tuesday morning for our next edition of Inside the 20 by Basement Brewed Fantasy Football. We're going to continue our discussion on free agency frenzy. We're talking about players that are changing jerseys and what that means for fantasy football in 2024. Between now and then, I will be in the basement routinely up and meticulously updating my fantasy football draft guide, my best ball rankings, and all the other resources that my subscribers, my members, are using to dominate their leagues and outsmart their friends in 2024. And when you're ready to do that, when you're ready to join us, head on over to basementbrewedff.com, and I highly recommend doing it now because the price is going to go up in April. You can see right there on the website the schedule of the price increases that are coming up each and every month. New members who sign up in March are going to be paying less than new members who sign up in April, who are going to be paying less than new members who sign up in May and June and July and August. You get the idea. It literally rewards you for signing up now as opposed to waiting until fantasy football season. That's all I got for you today. I will see you on the fantasy football field on Tuesday morning. Cheers. This brew is for you.